contribute to body.
I just wanted to add really quick that we're not tight in time in any fashion. Normally, we try to limit it to about 7, really for your guys' sake, so that if you have somewhere to be, we can let you know by 7 o'clock you're free. So if you guys have somewhere to go, that's fine. Go ahead and do what you guys got to do. We got all the time in the world. If you want to, I think we're about ready to start talking about the creme brulee, actually. So if you have anything you want to talk about that, let's go ahead and do it.
My concern is primarily for Ethan because he had a busy day and he's a bit busy father and he's up late. So I would say let's dive into creme brulee, and then after that Ethan can do what he pleases. And
hey, so the kids are at their grandparents' house.
Oh,
I'm a couple beers deep. We're good.
All right, sounds good.
Then everyone's happy. Let's do this. Let's talk about the creme brulee. Anyone that wants to open it tonight, go ahead and let's do so. Let's start talking shop.
Oh man, creme brulee.
So now
good job, Darren. Good job.
Now we're in the real brewery stuff here.
Hey, Darren, before we leave that, could I ask you a question? What is the origin of the way you spell Bruery?
Good question. Yeah, it's inspired by Patrick Brew. So Patrick Brew founded the company with support from his dad, Mike Brew. Their last name is R-U-E, Rue. So the spelling of the brewery is a play on their namesake. And you see it throughout our branding. Obviously, it's in the name of the company itself, but you also see it in, for example, the Rue Keller series, the twist on words there, and you'll see it a number of places. Brewery to Rue, obviously, and so that's really where it's coming from is their last name.
Okay, I appreciate that. It's driving my spell checker crazy.
Oh, it drives us. I mean, Ethan, I'm sure you've experienced this too. You call a vendor, you call somebody to do business and say, hey, I work with a small brewery. It's actually called the Bruery. And the automatic question is, which brewery? The brewery? It's terrible. It's
the brewery.
Especially if you spell it properly.
Gotcha. Thanks.
So while everyone's grabbing their bottles, if they're doing so, I just want to go over the poll results from this last beer we opened. It's actually scored very well. In the overall rating, we got a 9, aroma 8, and then overall flavor a 9, making it, I think, our best scoring beer of the night. But I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll if I can for the next one, and we can see what people say.
That is tasty.
All right, there's the poll. Go ahead and fill it out if you can. And while people go ahead and do that, why don't you talk to us about the creme brulee?
Sure. I'm gonna kind of. I'll start the conversation by saying this is a little bit of an outlier of a project. I have to. I'm going to do my best. I've got my information here, but Jeremy, our director of production, he oversees most the mixed culture program, but also more recently our overall barrel age and wood program, as well as innovation. And if you don't know Sour Jesus, I encourage you to look him up on Instagram and DM him and bug him. He'll really love that. But he's a funny guy, and he comes from a wine background, but he really is a genius when it comes to wood aging, how to handle a barrel program, and so the reason I'm talking him up a little bit is because this was a project where we collaborated with Three Sons Brewing, who are really. They've kind of made a little name for themselves, and Ethan, you can kind of help me out and support me on this from a beer branding perspective. But you know, they do some interesting things with barrel aged beers and strong beers. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I mean, so absolutely. I mean, like, maybe you've seen it on t-shirts or whatever in the craft beer pop culture, but you know, what are like the three, you know, big buckets, you know, right now? They're hazy IPAs, adjunct stouts, and fruited sours, right? So you know, that's what a lot of like up and coming like brewers are doing, obviously, because that's what's selling. And so Three Sons out of Dania Beach, Florida, that's what they're known for. So that's exactly what they do. They do hazy IPA, they do fruited sours, and then, you know, trying to like fill that third bucket. You know, they want to figure out some way into, you know, not necessarily the pastry stout, but the adjunct stout. And so we collaborated with them, not to say that they hadn't done it before, but we did this creme brulee project. I mean, so Darren, I just tried it, and man, like, salted caramel turtle bomb, dude, like, like fantastic.
So I think this one's a little bit different for this group. And the reason I say that is because on all of the other beers, we've talked a little bit about recipe. We've talked a little bit about specs on, you know, what we're targeting at a wort production level. And none of that kind of applies to this beer. And the reason I say that is because we didn't brew a base beer to make this beer. You know, when Three Sons came out, we toured them through our barrel cellar. You know, they were really interested in how we barrel age beer, and we started tasting different barrels. And this collaboration was built on building a blend. And this is a little part of what we do at the brewery that, and feel free to like roll out questions. But at a homebrew level, I know when I was homebrewing a little bit, you know, you're not blending. You're making a batch, you're bottling it out, you're tweaking that, and you're brewing your next batch. Like, that's, you know, and granted, I never got to a homebrewing level that, I do know that there are homebrewers that are barrel aging, that are like holding batches. That's I didn't get to that level. I decided to take a meager paycheck to do it for other people instead. But at the end of the day, this is a blending project. This is a blending collaboration. So we went into our barrel cellar and started tasting barrels. And then the concept was built out of, hey, this barrel tastes like vanilla. Like, I'm actually getting almost like a caramel character off this barrel. And, you know, you start to build that blend, and then you say, wow, this is like, what is the concept here? And the concept ended up being like a creme brulee, like type beer. And then we augmented that with some back end flavoring. So, and I mentioned dulce de leche going into curiosity at the kettle. This is an addition of dulce de leche on cold side, or after racking out a barrel. So you get an entirely different flavor experience from something like that. And that was something we had never done before. We didn't know how that was going to integrate. It was, you know, you're taking very expensive barrel aged beer and just heading into it. And that's kind of what collaborations are all about on the brewing side. So that's why I say this is a little bit different for this group when we're talking about brewing specs and how to make beer at a level and things that you guys can do at a home brewing level. This is a blending project. I mean, make no bones about it. And it turned out fantastic. But I think the takeaways are, you know, you look like something at like dulce de leche and salt vanilla. Like these are things that you can use on the cold side, and achieve really interesting flavor, flavor combinations. It tastes like creme brulee.
It really does.
And that's
it really does.
crazy to me. So
yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and
So when was this brewed?
go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, when was this brewed?
from a work production perspective, anywhere from 3-2 to a year ago. So it's a combination of barrels that came out of our cellar from different work production. So you've got a blend in here of white oak sap, which is our wheat wine base, bourbon barrel aged mash, probably a very small portion, if any, of Black Tuesday. It's not very dark, so I don't think they use very much of that, but they might have used like a half a cask just to temper and add some different flavors. But this is a blend of multiple different barrels, not based on style, but based on flavor building.
Well, I think it
all of
definitely
it come
hits
from
the
a
creme brulee.
Say that again, Mike.
Oh, I said I definitely think that it hits the flavor profile of creme brulee.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And did all of the components that went into it come from barrels?
This is a 100% barrel aged beer.
What kind of yeast do you use for something like this?
So this was fermented before going into barrel, and you know it's going to be, the beers that make up this blend are a combination of beers that were fermented with our house yeast or Cali. You know, I'm fairly confident in making that statement, if you will.
All right.
When you guys are like looking at like trying to have like a library of like beers to blend with, do you like target like, hey, we need like a certain amount of beer that's like kind of in this area and a certain amount in like another area, or like how do you come up with like what that library of aging beer is?
Yeah, I mean that is a, well, the easy answer would be like, that's Jeremy's job now, but but yeah, we do that, you know. So we look out at like our potential for, we know we have to create blends. We know we're going to have X amount of Black Tuesday variants that come out every year. Right. It is numbers based. Like we do have an idea of volume of each of these beers that we're gonna need to make. I think that then the next layer of complexity is how long do they have to age. So we want a minimum age. That is important to the development of the beer. So if we end up getting our foot in a trap on age, like that flavor is gonna suffer, and we don't want to do that. So we are constantly brewing barrel aged beer on a cycle of per month, based on what we think the following year or two we're going to produce. And we take in 6 to 8 truckloads at 270 barrels a piece of new to us bourbon barrels, and that doesn't include any new French oak or any specialty barrels or anything on top of that. Like we are a cycling barrel aged program, like, and all of these blends come out of that. So there's a little bit of forecasting, but it's you got to look at it in terms of keeping the barrel cellar full, and then the blending is a separate step. Sometimes you take some younger beer, might be tasting real good. Sometimes you need some older beer, and so that's a constant process.
So to expand on what Darren was saying, and looking back on my experience as a brewer at the brewery, we were constantly brewing, and by what I mean constantly is like year round, constantly brewing a Black Tuesday base. We were constantly brewing So Happens It's Tuesday base, always brewing a white oak sap, which was a wheat wine essentially, we were brewing a barley wine, which was our mash series, and brewing an English style old ale, which is our anniversary beer. So there's a fair amount right there to kind of like play with. And if you're brewing that all year round, then you have all these different ages to kind of sample and taste. And the more that you do so, you become familiar with, what does this young beer taste like? What does this mature beer taste like? And then it's really just about like the art of the blending, which, that's what those guys are really good at. So to kind of give you some insight on into that.
Yeah.
All right. Just two things real quick. I wanted to share the results from the last poll, which was the favorite beer from the first four. And as anyone can see now, the Dunkel and the chocolate stout absolutely took it. It's not very often we actually get a tie on the end here. So both beers were absolutely phenomenal. And well, definitely the Dunkel is something I could drink all day. This stout is something that is very enjoyable. And thank you so much.
Maybe I missed it. Did you talk about the Root Keller program?
We did in the beginning. That was before you got here. Sorry. Anyways, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for explaining everything that you guys have been working on. It's been an absolute pleasure doing all of this with you guys. And as someone who became president of this club earlier this week, I also, for the last 2.5 months, I've been working on this with Daniel, and it's been an absolute pleasure working with you guys. It's been great. And the fact that we broke some records with this has been nothing but a pleasure. So thank you guys so much for joining us and talking to us about everything you guys have been working on. It's been wonderful.
No, thank you. I mean, this is fun for us. Like we're on different coasts, but I think Ethan and I don't want to speak for you, Ethan, but like part of what makes this fun for us is being able to like have a beer and talk about our beers. My day to day is worrying about, are the dumpsters locked? Are we going to get rid of spent grain this week? Like there's a lot of stuff that's not fun. This is fun, so thank you for helping us out. And Ethan,
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. Thinking back to that experience that we had for the 40th, and working with Firestone, and that was before I joined the ranks of the brewery. I mean, it's awesome to be able to interact with like the homebrew community and specifically the Maltose Falcons. I mean, yeah, I appreciate like that you guys like reached out to us, to kind of get this going. It's certainly fun. And I mean, I see Darren, talking about the details and the passion that he's got about the projects. And, that's not something, when we like interact with groups, whether that's consumers or, some other sort of like private group, they're not interested in the details of the brewing process, and so you guys are asking those questions, and I'm seeing Darren, really kind of dig deep into some of this stuff, and I think that's pretty exciting, and I think we certainly appreciate that. I mean, Patrick got started in, he was very much like a home brewer, and he like really tried to apply that to the brewery. And so, I mean, I think that it's a two-way road. And so while you guys say you're thankful, we're thankful to be a part of it, really.
Hey,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I first of all want to say a couple of things. Darren, number one, Trumer Pills, one of my favorite beers. Like absolutely, it's always on stock here. They got it at Trader Joe's, not Trader Joe's, Whole Foods. and it's like $9.50 for a 6-pack. The best Pilsner, the best like easy drinking beer of all time. Love it. So awesome that you work there. And then the brewery, I mean, we're such big fans of the brewery. So hats off to you guys for doing this, but also hats off to Elon and Quinn for getting this going, because I've been hounding the brewery to do this happy hour since last like July and August. And I'm a member of the society. I even went down there and was talking to people and like all this. And, you know, you guys are so big and so kind of busy with stuff that it was always like, yeah. And I never got anywhere. And I just kind of gave up because we were doing it with other people. So I'm glad that we finally got to do this. And Alon, so I'm, you know, I don't know how you pulled it off, but this is a great move. So I'm glad it happened, and great showing on the beers tonight, guys. Really, really good job.
And thank you. And we'd be happy to do it again. I mean, I think there might be something to be said about keeping this communication up and just saying like, you know, we could even almost say like, hey, we got some beers coming out. We'd like to, you know, like talk about, and again, like let's keep the door open, right? Like you're right here. This is right here. Poor Ethan. If things get a little bit better soon, we'll fly Ethan out here. We'll get together and have some real beers.
Well, I mean, a few things. Ethan, one, next time you're in LA, come hang out. It'll be great. This has been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, in 6 months or whatever it is, if you guys have some great beers coming out, have Daniel shoot me a message. We'll get you guys back on here. This has been wonderful. And if you guys have 4 other beers that you think we should try, I would love to do it. I don't care if they're Offshoot. I don't care if they're Bruery. Let's do it again. And third, one of my favorite experiences as a Falcon has been working with different breweries, sometimes actually brewing in their shops. So if you guys would ever be interested in hosting one of our events where we actually come in and brew with you guys, I think that would be absolutely fantastic. And I'd love to work with you on something like that.
Is that the brewery guy? Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah, we can do that. You know, takes a little bit of planning, but we absolutely are open and can do that. You know, obviously we have to be a little sensitive to current events right now, but like let's keep
COVID.
that on the docket.
Craig is actually a master of the triple IPA. So if Offshoot ever really wants to get back into it, let's plan him into it. We can do this.
Nice.
Yeah,
I mean,
Elon, I was actually going
sounds
to bring the same thing up, but you beat me to it. Yeah, you guys tonight was phenomenal. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we could do a collab brew sometime.
Let's work it out.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my fondest memories was that Firestone trip, and I would love to. I don't know if we can recreate that, but you know, like doing some sort of version of that at the brewery, you know, would be great. And it's easy for me to say, you know, over here on the East Coast, you know, and say like, hey, California guys, like, you know, you guys take care of this. But
you'd have to you'd be here.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. That would be a dream come true.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for everything. Thank you for the info. Thank you for the brew notes. I'm sorry Drew couldn't be here to finish us out, but if you guys want to take off, you guys are free to do so. This is normally the point in the evening where we kind of start just talking amongst ourselves. Again, you're more than welcome to join us, but we know it's been a long day, especially for you, Ethan. So again, thank you guys so much.
Gonna open the floor.
Thank you for hosting us. I'm gonna sign out, but cheers everyone. Have fun, enjoy the beers.
Thank you.
See, Darren. See ya.
I'm still here.
All right. Anyone have any last minute questions for Ethan then?
Yeah, Ethan, I have a question about the collab.
Sit for me. I gotta go.
Quite often, you know, 2 breweries do a collab and they produce 2 totally separate brews. Are you guys blending the same beers and they're selling the same beers under different names, same names, or how does this work?
So you're talking about the creme brulee, right?
Yes, with 3 Sons. Yeah.
So that was actually like a one-sided collab. So that was the beer that was only released from our side. And on the 3 Sons side, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of like our like Brewsicle series, which is like a We basically take like our like base Berliner Weiss and we just like super fruit it. And it's almost, it's those like super fruited sours. And so that was their version of the collab. And they called it Bling Sickle, something like that, but in terms of like the creme brulee, that was just us.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Hey, Ethan, I'm gonna ask you like to put on your brewer shoes again, because
I'll try. It's been a while.
well, like my question is like on these like super big beers that you guys are well known for, like how do you guys get them to attenuate? I mean, is it like multiple O2 additions? Is it like sugar staggered like additions? What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the easiest example is, we'll just talk about like Black Tuesday. And we use Black Tuesday as a base for Chocolate Rain. We use it for a base for Gray Monday and any of the weekday beers that we put out. It starts with our Belgian house yeast, which if you were on earlier in the call, is our basically it's a Duvel Belgian yeast strain, and again, so it's been a little while, so I don't remember exactly the timing, during fermentation, but we feed it sugar, so I think it's like, so we brew to a gravity of like 25 Plato for Black Tuesday. And then I don't remember if it's 2 days in or 3 days in, but we'll feed it X amount of corn sugar, of dextrose. And then 24 hours later, we'll feed it again, and we'll just continue to feed it. And I think it spans like a period of like 3 days to get to whatever that target gravity is. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what it is, but that's generally it. There's nothing outside of that.
Nutrient additions like Fermax or something like that.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Do you do nutrient additions like yeast nutrient?
So I know we do like a yeast nutrient during knockout, but I don't recall there being any yeast nutrient during those feedings. That seems to kind of like make sense to me as a brewer, but I don't recall that being in the playbook when I was a brewer. I don't know if that's changed or not, but that's my recollection.
Do you guys only do one O2 edition, or do you do multiple O2 editions anytime?
Again, exact same answer. Exact same answer. Like, obviously during knockout, we're doing like O2. I don't recall if we do if we do it during the feedings. I don't think we do, because I think there's O2 pickup in that process, because essentially, imagine your March pump, but like 10 times bigger, with essentially like a funnel as part of like the intake. You're dropping in.
So there's like
actually it's like a half, like a keg that's in line with that pump, and so you're allowing some liquid to kind of like fill up into that keg, and before it flows over, you throttle your pump so that like there's like a balance and that it doesn't overflow, and you're taking like a bag of sugar and you're dumping it in there. I think there's enough of like an oxygen pickup during that process that we don't actually like pump in additional oxygen. But
Entrainment or entrapment, I don't know what you would call it. Entrainment, I think.
yeah, I don't know what the term is.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I was kind of, Darren was mentioning adding dry hops like one or 1.5
Can you
Play-Doh for
repeat
kernel.
yourself? You cut out there for a second.
Oh, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, just wondering, Darren had mentioned that like on your hazy IPAs, you're often now dry hopping like, 1 to 1.5 Play-Doh from terminal, which is not something like, I think, radical that other breweries aren't doing necessarily, but like, do you, I was wondering like, as far as like your yeast harvesting, are you trying to harvest from those batches at all, or do you have another way of like propagating up those yeast strains? Cause it, or are you able to harvest even like, a few Play-Doh before terminal gravity?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And that's a question I would certainly ask Darren. I do know that we have like a full on like yeast propagation system. And they're fairly big tanks that we like propagate that yeast up into. I want to say they're like 20, 25 barrel tanks. I don't know that we're getting, so I don't have the firsthand experience to answer that question, but just based on my experience, I think there would be too much yeast in suspension. I don't think there would be enough yeast like flocculating out to really get like a good quality harvest, from that.
And that's always the dilemma. And then if you try to harvest, later, you have all the hops that are going to get mixed in with the yeast, which is not.
It's
sounds
going to
like
be
sounds like you're probably doing some like separate, just yeast propagations, just separate from your regular brewing schedule.
That's correct. I mean, so say we had like a prop of, or a prop tank of like 20 barrels, just to like name an easy number, we would generally like keep that alive at like the 5 barrel, like mark. And then knowing that like we have, something that we're going to pitch into, we would prop that up to like, depending on the batch, like, 10 to 15 barrels. So there's a lot of, you factor in like the planning of the batches. There's not like a big need to like harvest from those individual tanks,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Anyone else have any questions? Ryan, you've been unusually quiet tonight.
I have just been sitting here doing work, putting some recipes together and just listening in, having some beers.
That's fair enough.
Because I got some fun hops to play with from Yakima Valley, so I've been trying to figure out what to do with them.
Ethan, Ryan is someone who's been joining us from St. Louis. He managed to find our happy hours and has joined us, I believe, for almost every single one since he's found us.
Nice.
Yep. I've just been working on my 2021 Pomona's Nectar with the Pink Boots blend from Yakima Chief, but I'm going to throw in an addition of Medusa and HBC 586 in there as well.
Who's your next a pint with?
My next a pint with is Monday at 7 CST with Dave Carpenter from the Zimmergy and the AHA. So he's going to be on talking about the NHC rule changes and how they're running it this year and answer questions on that and the Big Brew Day coming up in May. and then he's gonna move into roasting your own coffee beans and making coffee beer with them. So that's gonna happen on Monday.
Is there that much benefit to roasting your own?
I have no idea. I have never done it.
You should tune into the chat and you'll find out.
I'm addicted to espresso.
So I haven't actually had a cup of coffee in a very long time.
Ethan, when was the last time you were a member of the Falcons?
It was probably 2016 was like my last year. I think I moved away from California. Yeah, it was in 2016. So
Who
yeah.
was president at that time? Do you remember?
What does that have to do?
That's a good question.
Barack Obama.
No, not our president.
Hey, Ethan, I was very, very intrigued by your comment about the three big trends today: the hazies, the fruited sours, and the high gravity with the additions. I'm very familiar with the hazy trend. I wasn't that familiar with the other. I mean, I see them a lot, but what's your take on where the market is going? I'm just curious.
I mean, I think it's full steam ahead in those categories. I think there's a little bit of pullback in the traditional sour category, which is like what we make, you know, where a lot of your acid production and your sour beers are made from barrel fermented or barrel soured, you know, the traditional method. Where those microbes are like embedded in the wood. There's a little bit of pullback from that because I think the acidity is so great that that I think the mass appeal is limited. And on the flip side, you know, you have mild acidity and you add a bunch of like fruit to it. You know, similar to like having like a sweet stout and adding a bunch of like, you know, vanilla and brownie or, you know, whatever the fun flavor is, you know, that speaks to everybody. That's the draw. I don't see that going away anytime soon. I do see a little bit of a resurgence in the lager category, even down to like American light lagers. And I see that, you know, I see a little bit more like Helles. I see a little bit more like Pils. I see a little bit. I mean, I know those aren't American light lagers, but technically. But I you know, I see a lot more like smaller craft breweries and a lot of these guest breweries that we bring in making those beers, and we're reluctant to sell those mainly because our clientele buys big barrel aged beers, stout, sours, whatnot, but we're seeing a pickup in Helles, Pils, you know, those sorts of beers.
It's very interesting because you talked about Firestone Walker when the Falcons were there. We recently had the head brewer at Hangar 24, Jason Pond, who is the right-hand guy for Mitch what's his name, Brindleson at Firestone.
Matt, yeah.
There, and he got a big job to go to Europe, where they are on a totally different level. They've moved over to American New Age style IPAs, and he was the head brewer at Big Dog for I think 6-7 years in Scotland, and now he's back at Hangar 24. But he was telling me that completely the other experience out there. They're moving away from traditional beers in Europe to New Age style IPAs. That's the big thing there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, and I don't want to speak like out of turn, but it seems like here in America, like, I mean, there was just such a surge of like craft beer You know, and Americans like big, bold things, and you know, they want to do the independent thing, and so we explored all these categories, and we pushed all these categories to the limits, and not to sound nationalistic, which I don't know if that's even a word. But that, I mean, that's what Americans do, right? And there's so much history in Europe that it seems quite natural, and I could be talking out of my ass, I don't know, that they hold on to the historical and to the traditional, but you know, slowly but surely they you know, they feel the, you know, just like the brewery, like, is like, okay, I guess we're going to start brewing IPAs. You know, they're like, oh, well, I guess we're going to start brewing IPAs too, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you know, the European culture is a very old beer culture, unlike here. And he was harkening back to the days of when IPAs first hit England in the, you know, in the 18th century, and they discovered these highly hopped beers they were putting on ships to go to India, and suddenly one of the ships ran aground, and you know, they brought those barrels and people tasted them. I was like, you know, wow, you know, I think it's the same kind of thing where Europe discovered new age hops like in the last 10 years, and it's completely blown their minds. And a lot of, especially the younger generation. I was in England. I've been in England the last 3 years, actually, every year. And you see in the traditional pubs, a lot of the younger crowd moving away from the traditional British beers to these new age IPAs. It's crazy.
I mean, that's very interesting because, you know, like I said, there's been like a little bit of a draw towards like these very clean beers. You know, like you drink a lot of these like hazy IPAs, like there's residual sweetness, right? Like, and I'm not saying cloying, but you know, it weighs heavily on the palate. And you drink these pastry stouts or heavily adjuncted stouts, and it weighs heavily on the palate. You know, but you drink like a lager, and it's clean and it's easy to drink, and so you see the draw there.
Absolutely,
and-
absolutely. Yeah, beer was a working man's drink originally. It was like 4% for guys to go back to lifting stuff and porters moving furniture around and on ships, and but it's become an elegant drink now. And I personally feel that this high gravity, high sweetness is a phase that's going to wear out pretty soon. That's my personal. Maybe I'm totally wrong.
No, you're right. And I mean, we make a lot of high gravity, tends to be sweet like beer, but I think you have like a population, and we'll see. Time will tell. I think you have a population that is experiencing that, and they're moving towards something that's drier and cleaner. And then you have a population that is experiencing it for the first time, just like when you first started like experiencing all the flavors of craft beer. You know, you went all in, or at least I did, and it was like, oh my god, this tastes like a liquid brownie. Oh my god, this tastes like a churro. Oh my god, you know. And so you have like an influx of those people, just like you have like, again, I don't know if it's a real word, an outflux of those people, you know.
But after a while, that shock value kind of wears off.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But again, I can only speak from my perspective. So,
Elon had to leave for a few minutes. Is there any other questions anybody else has for Ethan? Anyone? Nope. Any other?
It's just you and me. It's just you and me on the car right now. You know.
I'm curious if there's a market for anything that's in between those two kind of extremes of the very clean beers and lighter beers and the more heavy, very high gravity beers. You know, something that is, well, in between, where it's a little bit sweet, but it's a little bit medium bodied and it's flavorful. I mean, as a home brewer, I've had experience with doing a lot of things kind of culinarily with spices. I've made my own caramels and then actually added them to the brew to be able to get some extra flavor out of it. I'm curious whether there will be a middle ground where we can actually meet somewhere in the middle that has some flavor to it, but is not as light or as clean as before, but is not as heavy and thick.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think that that's where everything is going to converge. You know, I mean, there will be people that will lean left. We're not going to get political here. There are going to be people that lean left, and there will be people that lean right. And the majority of the people are going to lean to the middle, or are not going to lean at all, I guess. I mean, we see that. So we put out a beer called, it was in collaboration with an ice cream maker based out of Ohio called Jenny's Ice Cream. And it was inspired by one of their ice creams called Blackout chocolate cake, Blackout forest cake. But basically it was like a Black Forest cake ice cream. And we put that out, and it was about an 8% beer. It was not sweet at all. It was definitely not as sweet as like this Curiosity beer. So I wouldn't call it a pastry stout. And we actually added a little bit of salt to it, which I think kind of cut a little bit of that sweetness. And I think that's what you're talking about, is like, it was a very like middle ground kind of beer. You know, not to be salesman-y, but it was a very easy beer to sell because it was that middle ground.
I'm just curious. We had a brewer on recently from Green Cheek, Evan. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah. I know Evan. Yeah.
Yeah, he's interesting guy, and he has a great beer. But his whole take on the whole craft brewing scene is that because there's so much diversity on there, the thing that really differentiates him, and you know, if he considers himself a great brewer, is the fact that because of all the IPAs and the highly hopped beers, he can produce something that's super fresh, that's available locally, that you couldn't get even if you got a Russian River that was 2 weeks old or 3 weeks old. And he prides himself on beers that are like within a week, you know, at the tap room. And what do you think about that trend? I mean, in terms of having a really locally, you know, going back to the old local pub kind of scene for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a great point. So as a consumer, I think that's a brilliant idea. As like a would-be, you know, future brewery owner, which isn't that what like all of us homebrewers like want to do, or we dream about, right? I think that is what we want to happen, and we see that happening here and there. But there's so much competition, and it's difficult to compete with like the regional breweries and the bigger breweries. You know, I personally, I think the future of craft beer is, or should be, your local tavern, much like it is, or it is, I don't know, in Europe. You know, where you have you know, that town's tavern is making their beer, you know, making that community's beer. I think we could see that in the US.
Really?
But I think it becomes political, and I think it becomes like capitalistic to say that like, you know that the little guy stands no chance. You know, like it's tough. It's a tough balance.
Yeah. Well, in Europe, 90% of the population is drinking their local beers. Out here, 90% of the population is drinking Budweiser and Miller. You know, so it's a very different culture. The craft brewer has this much smaller chunk
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so in Van Nuys, and so I haven't been to this brewery in a long time. But McLeod and Van Nuys, at least when they were first conceptualized, they were really focused on UK style beers, and so you pony you pony up to their bar, and they had 7 beer engines, maybe more, no beer over 5 or 6%. And in my personal opinion, like it was amazing, and it was local, and it was easy, and it's like that was a great source, but I don't know that you can do that.
Well, we've got a huge bunch of McLeod's fans on this group, and they've been really struggling with COVID, man, because first of all, they don't have any outdoor space for eating. They don't have a restaurant, and they've also had to diversify outside their British beers just to, stay afloat. So they've had a really rough time the last year. Very sad.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly dive deeper into like business plan and business model or whatever, but like certainly like that outdoor location, that's hurt. That I can see that hurting them.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, or one of the ways they've adopted to that, is to create a second line where they're talking about more popular flavors or summertime beers or margarita beers or things like that, not under their same name. It's a little bit like what Bruery did with your Offshoot. And I think that's a way of handling some of that. Certainly where they're located is a fairly large Hispanic community, and so British style ales are not going to be as well known as the Coronas and that kind of stuff.
They've been trying to get really creative during COVID. They've had this lifetime all you can drink. You pay like $2,000, and they also have, if you're a local business, you can have your advertising on their cans. They're trying everything to raise money. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wish them the best. I used to know like one of the original brewers, Andy over there. I thought they had they had carved out like a great niche, and I even like in my own like dreams, like, modeled it after what they were doing. But I can only imagine, I mean, knowing what COVID has done to our business, I can't even imagine like what it's done to them,
That's pretty remarkable. You guys haven't laid anybody off. That's amazing.
Yeah, we certainly got lucky. I mean, and we definitely got, so in DC, it's all to go. So not a whole lot really changed about our business model, but in California, I mean, the tasting rooms got hit. And then, you talk about your distribution sales, bars and restaurants aren't buying, but grocery stores are buying twice as much. So it's been kind of an interesting like learning experience, business wise.
Elon was there back for a second, but he's gone. Oh, there he is. Elon, we've been talking trash about you while you've been gone.
Yeah.
How dare you? Bruce, what did you think of the Dunkel earlier?
Well, I'm not really that much into the brown ales and such, but it was certainly not as sweet as some brown ales that I've had, which actually was kind of pleasant. Overall, it was a bit bland, honestly, we all kind of thought that. But I know a lot of the members thought it was good.
Who do you have there with you tonight? Is that, what is his name? Ruben?
Rudy.
Rudy. That's
and,
what it is.
Nick and Troy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was
So if you
good.
thought,
I mean,
if
as
you
far
thought
as
the Dunkel
as
was
it
sweet,
being
you probably thought Curiosity was extremely sweet, right?
Oh, you know, this is I've had this before, but the previous batches of the Curiosity have been sweeter, and I like this better. This was a more of a flavor defined rather than a sugar defined beer, and I liked it better. Yeah,
That's interesting. If you look, so I don't know if you're in tuned with like untapped scores, but the scores, which for better or for worse, like, you know, you can believe them, you don't have to believe them, whatever, like teach his own, you know. But the first time we released Curiosity, I think there was like a lot of hype behind who we collaborated with, you know. And so the scores were like through the roof, like they were insane. But the second iteration of Curiosity, and obviously we had the chocolate version, you know, certainly didn't measure up to the first time, you know. And so we got a lot of people that were like, it wasn't quite as cinnamony, you know, as it was the first time, you know. So I mean, that's kind of like, I don't know where I'm going with it. You guys have been feeding me drinks, so to speak.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's like the level of cinnamon has always been a point of contention of any kind of beer that you, or whatever that you add cinnamon to. There's always going to be people that say, oh, it's too much. And there's always going to be people that say there's not enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, and yeah, this was a little bit light on the cinnamon. That's okay. You know, personal taste, maybe a hair more, but not much more. You know, you get too much, it's definitely it's just out of the realm. But and I've had beers like that, but you know, you've always kind of kept it within the acceptable range for the most part.
Hey, I found it was a very intense beer, and it was great dessert beer, but it's something I just couldn't drink a lot of.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about the creme brulee? How much of that can you drink?
I didn't open that one yet.
Okay.
I'm gonna hold that one for a bit.
Yeah. I mean,
You can drink this much. This much.
Yeah.
Just that much.
So good.
It's very good.
It's a long weekend, so maybe I should open it.
Boy, do I feel it.
Good Lord.
Oh no, it's gone.
Wow.
This is really like liquid creme brulee in a glass. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Wow. It really is. It reminds me of those little like salted caramel turtle shells.
Yes.
And it's the salt that really jumped out at me.
Because
Yeah.
it's not like cloyingly sweet. That little salty bite makes it so stupidly drinkable.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
It's
salt,
dangerous
the
and
salt definitely helps.
Yeah.
Because it calls you back.
Yep.
Yeah.
What?
Absolutely.
If it was
Absolutely.
just creme brulee, I'd be like, I can't.
Yeah.
But I can.
It gets sweet, but salty.
I had posted too. We were having a discussion here whether or not and I wish we'd saved this, but I didn't know that this was going to be available. But if probably about a month and a half ago, we'd opened another bottle of the Southern Tier creme brulee, and it was like I honestly couldn't decide which one I liked better. The Southern Tier I think was a little creamier, and this had a little more pleasant heat, a little bit more that little warmth that just sort of spreads down your throat. And
we're known for that.
I don't know. I can't honestly decide which one I like better. They're so fucking good.
Right.
Absolutely good. This definitely is a higher alcohol content than the Southern Tier, without a doubt.
Hey, you drink one or two of those ones that are warming, you don't notice the warmth.
Well, that's the thing. It's, I mean, okay, yeah, it's a little sweet, but to me, the alcohol heat isn't overwhelming. It's, I mean, for
pleasant.
What is this thing? 15%? This is
Yeah. So we definitely like our 15, 16 percenters, like there are ones that you will get that alcohol warming. Creme brulee, I had it. So, and I'll be honest with you guys, because we just got them on Tuesday here in DC. I just tried it tonight at the shop before our call, and I was like, man, this is trouble. Like, because like alcohol warmth is very subdued.
So do you have the same? Do you have the same bottling that we do, Ethan?
I'm sorry.
Do you have the same bottling that we do?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
10%.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's dessert in a glass, but it's delicious.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Pretty lovely.
I mean, I'm guessing this wasn't intended to be to like go with your dinner. This isn't like a.
It's not a pizza beer.
This isn't a pizza beer.
Probably not.
This is where you have some like some vanilla frozen custard, and you pour this over it to make a float.
Yeah.
It's funny. I said to Scott, this feels like I took a shot of bourbon and poured it over a creme brulee and then mixed it and ate it.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Sounds delicious.
I'm totally happy.
Yeah.
Right. One thing that I've found in some of the events that we work out here, you know, some of the food pairing events that we do, is because we do a lot of these like bigger like alcohol beers that have some sweetness to it, and so like you would probably think that like, oh, that's gonna naturally pair well with a dessert, right? Mm-hmm. And in some cases it does, but what I've found is that the sugar of the big beer cuts the sugar. No. I'm sorry. Other way around. The sugar of the dessert cuts the sugar of the big beer. And so what you're left with when you taste the beer is just the booze.
Yeah, sure.
And it's overly boozy. So I would, you know, keep that in mind, or maybe you guys have experienced that, but like keep that in mind when you're going through your tastings, like, you know, sometimes it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
No, I've actually noticed that
there's
before.
something to be said for keeping your fermentation clean and minimizing your fusels, because when you get into the booziness, there's a definite difference between the fusel alcohols and the ethyl alcohol. The ethyl alcohol heat is nice, but when you get into the fusels, it can be nasty. I mean, like when I do when I do the Apple Jacks and I bring those up 23%, I don't have too much in the way of fusels in there, so the only heat that you get is from the ethanol.
And I'm not getting any fusels from this.
No, this is.
No, this is clean. This is
very.
Yeah.
Which is dangerous.
Yeah. It is dangerous.
But Ethan, I've noticed this. What you were saying earlier, like sometimes you get a dessert beer and you want to pair it with a dessert, and then they seem to cancel each other out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a great tradition of having dessert wines with like salty and fatty foods, like
yeah.
That makes so much more sense. Like,
yeah,
you know,
it does.
Things with cheese.
Right, or foie gras.
Yeah.
Yep.
A good sauteing with the foie gras is so much better than a sauteing with a dessert, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Originally, I was thinking like a Ben and Jerry's vanilla, and then I thought, no, the pistachio.
Yeah, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Along those lines, Ethan
go well with a pistachio ice cream.
Ethan, what would you pair with this?
I mean, I think your instinct is right. I think I would probably go with something like fatty and salty. You know, I think that you know, we just made here at home like a pot roast, and that might seemingly pair and so it's all subjective, right? So that might seemingly pair like better with like your traditional like malty doppelbock or whatever, you know, but I mean, I think that could work here too. Anything super like hearty, it's kind of mirror that like malty like aspect of the beer, but then like the fatty aspects kind of like counteracts the sweetness, you know.
Yeah.
I'm no sommelier, or I'm no, you know.
No,
like,
but you have thoughts. But yeah, and also the more we're talking about this, the more I'm thinking, oh my gosh, a creamy blue cheese.
I know. I
with
was just
this?
thinking, like, I want gorgonzola something with this.
So that's a very interesting suggestion. So we've done a fair amount of beer and cheese pairings like out here, and they've done it in California too. But what this particular cheesemonger pairs with blue cheese is stout.
Sure.
And I'm sure there's a difference between like a dry stout and like a sweet stout, but like that's what she is very, very adamant about, is like blue cheese works with stout. So give it a try.
Yeah, I
That
like
makes some
that.
sense. Yeah.
Because generally, strong flavors do not go mix well together. So if you have a very, very delicious, very strong, very high flavored beer, you don't want to pair it with another very strong dessert or very, very strong flavored meal. The charcuterie plate kind of thing may be a little bit trendy, but it also does lend itself towards individual pieces that are either sweet or salty or savory in certain ways that are perfect for pairing with beers and things like this. And there's a reason why stouts and blue cheeses go well together, because they are kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum, and they both have the delicious aspects on their own regard on opposite sides, and they mix well. So no, it's good to have a flight within a charcuterie type plate that has a variety of textures and flavors in it as well, so that you can take each piece and kind of mix it together.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, definitely. Wow.
So, Ethan, do you have any dream beers that you wish the place would make?
That's a good question.
I mean,
for a place,
It's just a handful of us now.
I mean, Bruery is a Swiss Army knife. If there ever was one in the Southern California area, it's, I mean, Bruery is the place that I feel like is reliably experimental constantly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what like, is there a thing that you're looking at the slate and wishing, I wish we would do one of those?
So kind of a boring answer, sorry, is and I wanted to throw it out to Darren earlier, but I would love to see on the Rue Keller side, I would love to see first like a Doppelbock, but really I would love to see like an Eisbock, you know. Like I'm a big fan of like these big malty, lean a little sweet, you know, kind of beers. Like I like those. Now I don't drink those, like, you know, I don't crush like 3 of those in a night, you know, but I would like to see that done. Yeah, I'm also a huge fan of sweet mead. I love mead. And I don't know how we could incorporate that.
Has Bruery done any mead projects?
We don't have any. We did like a honey saison.
That's actually kind of surprising. I'm surprised you guys don't make any meads, because you have everything else.
Well, so honey is a difficult thing during fermentation, right? Because like it just burns up, right? Like,
well, I'm glad Bruce is back, because he's the guy to talk to actually about this. Anything mead wise, Eisbock actually specifically. He actually made us an Eisbock for one of our happy hours, but I guess he's gone again. He wandered off while you mentioned his name. But what were you saying, Ethan? There.
I mean, I think any sort of like honey. So we made a beer called Mr. Sanders. which has like a Winnie the Pooh like reference to the name. But it's a honey saison, and when you taste it, like you don't get a lot of like honey like to it. And there's certainly not like residual sweetness because like when we make saisons, we're using like a wild yeast that like eats through any available sugar. So, I mean, I guess I would like to see some sort of like just like we do with like beer wine hybrids that really like, I mean, if you didn't know, you would say they're more wine like than they are beer like. I would like to see us do something that's more mead like than beer like, So
That beer wine pairing is so interesting. We just had one, but I can't remember which one it was, like a week or two ago. And it is really interesting because there's the vinous quality behind the beer.
Yeah.
Don't remember which
So,
one it was.
so I would recommend if you guys see it out there, and I'm not trying to like say order local delivery or anything. I'm not trying to do any of that, but we just started doing a beer called Spritz This, which is like a red wine spritzer, and it's a
You know
beer
where
wine.
you are?
What's that?
I said, do you know where you are? Red wine spritzer.
Fair enough.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
We're with you.
But
we're with you.
But I mean, I think it's fantastic. But then my wife, like, who drinks more wine and drinks more sour beer than I drink, because really I drink IPA and lager. But I brought this Spritz This beer home to her, and she was like, this is fantastic. This is like my new favorite thing. So I would encourage you guys to like sample that if you see that out there. It's about 5%, pretty low ABV, kind of like a Lambrusco kind of drink. If you guys like wine, if you don't like wine, then not
we actually were into wine before we were into beer. But is that available in cans or bottles?
It's cans. It's a 4-pack, 12-ounce cans.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's pretty delicious, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I will look for it. Yeah, that's cool.
All right. What? Okay, Southland. Where can we find it?
That's a good question. So my company answer would be like, hey, head to the
Local delivery.
Brewery.com. Like,
some of us are outside of the area.
I can tell you where you can find it in DC. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Fair. Yeah. Just curious.
We'll research.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I still lived in Southern California. We moved away a little while ago, and one day we'll be back.
How is DC treating you?
Right now it's cold. It's cold and bitter.
Yeah.
And
not at all metaphorical.
Are you talking about the weather or the
all of it?
Politically, it's cold and bitter.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time right now, right? It's an interesting time.
Well, I've really enjoyed all of these beers, Ethan, tonight.
Yeah, these were fantastic.
I mean, I've been a fan of the brewery for a while, but it's always been like, oh, Bruery is going to be a big bottle of a big beer that's going to lay me out, and so it's kind of like it's always been an to me I kind of came to associate brewery with event drinking, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. It was
absolutely.
Like Dead Palace beers were brewery.
Right. And it's like there's
Yeah, and their events like the Black Tuesday release parties. Oh, fuck me running. My God.
They're great, but but it's always been kind of special beers, and these are special, absolutely. But I think the thing and even though my favorite beer of the night was actually the Dunkel. The biggest surprise to me was the first hazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't drink hazies, and I really enjoyed that hazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear you say that. So I think that Cart and Horse actually, and since we're in like a little bit of a smaller group and Darren isn't on the call,
nothing leaves the call.
Yeah.
What happens in the Falcons stay in the Falcons.
Right. I think Cart and Horse like
released nationwide, so whatever.
I think Cart and Horse underperform what we do on the hazy side. So if you think that might start to speak to you, then I would encourage you to try Visions and Retreat. Visions being the single double dry hopped IPA, and Retreat being the double IPA. Those are both fantastic beers that I would drink at any day of the week. Yeah.
I really, Drew touched on this earlier, but one of the things that has jumped out at me about a lot of hazies in the last year or two is this gritty mouthfeel.
Yeah.
And yours did not have that to me. It had a nice silky mouthfeel.
I wasn't chewing it.
I wasn't like licking my teeth constantly trying to get it off. And I loved it had this big hop aroma that just like kept leaping out of the glass, like even as it warmed, it kept jumping out. Sometimes they die off like that, and honestly, I had that a little bit with the horse. I had a little bit of that with the horse. But Cart really
Scott, isn't that due to a lot of calcium chloride, that chalky, powdery taste? You know
what? I actually have wondered if it's the opposite, if it's actually just too much damn gypsum.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I've in addition to all the flaked stuff, Ethan, I'm
like a Leinenkugel?
What's that?
You mean something like a Leinenkugel?
I'm not
Leinenkugel Brewery. Very, very
like a shandy, like a lager or lemonade, like.
Oh, shandy.
Or here Indian Wells.
Well, when people talk about hazies, they talk about them being juicy. And when I think of juicy, I don't think of sand in my mouth, which is what I get from a lot of other hazies. And I didn't get that today. And that's part of why I enjoyed this one so much, was not only, and honestly, it was the 1-2 punch. It was the, hey, here is finally that giant hop aroma continuing to leap out of the glass that I want, and not just overpowering, like pummeling my taste buds with like dank IBUs.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also laying off a little bit on the, let's say, I don't feel like I've got like sandpaper on my tongue from that grittiness.
Yeah.
And
it hasn't wrecked my palate, my nose.
This might be personal preference, but because like I said, I'm not a hazy guy, but I really enjoyed that combination of balance. And this, and I will say, literally has been my favorite hazy.
Yeah, we took one sip and we're like, this is the best hazy I've ever had.
This is
okay. That's awesome. Thank you for the kind words. If that's the best hazy you ever had, you need to try Relax, Retreat, and Visions. You guys need to try those because those are better. Those are subjectively better.
Tell me about the hops though, because some people are Mosaic fans. I'm not one of them.
I'm a Mosaic fan. I am a Mosaic fan. Yeah, I'm a Mosaic. I'm a Citra fan. So
Visceral, yes. Mosaic, not so much.
to talk about like that grittiness or that greenness, I think there's a preponderance of packaging IPAs as fresh as possible, and almost too fresh. And you get that, I think, with a little bit like smaller. And when I say small, I mean smaller craft brewers. Like,
Sure.
we're a fairly sizable like regional craft brewery.
Right.
And so your smaller ones they're trying to capitalize on, and we are too, in a sense, on the idea of the fresher, the better. But that's not always the case. Like, you can have an IPA that is too green, that it's too fresh, if that makes sense. And so it'll give you almost this like hop particulate on your palate, this green kind of flavor, this kind of like.
And I like me a little bit of diacetyl.
What's that?
I'm weird. I like me a little diacetyl. I'm weird that way. I like the green IPAs. You pull it out of the goddamn fermenter or the bright tank, and there's a little bit of diacetyl there. I kind of dig that myself. But
Hey, that's the new style in beer. Green beers like Vino Verde.
Yeah, it's like orange wine, right? Like, it's all subjective. Like, at the end of the day, it is all subjective.
Yeah.
You find what you like.
Yeah.
Like,
Orange. How many people are into orange wines on this group?
Hey,
weird.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
All right.
It's kind of a thing, but it's been around for a long time. It's what it's.
It has,
yeah.
For a long time.
Classic stuff.
Anyway, getting back to Ethan's thing about the mead and the beer, I'm looking forward to the next bracket from you guys.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I think it's a hard thing to like capture.
So Ethan, I have a question real quick. I'm out in St. Louis, so it's very difficult for me to every now and then I'll come across a brewery, but not very often. Like, I saw them a hell of a lot more when I was living in Texas. But real quick, so I've had Southern Tiers creme brulee from their Blackwater series, and I have not had yours. So I'm kind of curious on for those that have both, what's the differences between the two of them?
So I haven't had Southern Tiers, but I can send you ours if you would like.
Oh, that would be so bad.
Pick them up on that. You fucking do that. You will not. You got to do that. Ryan, motherfucker, goddamn, get some of the shit. It's so good. But I will tell you that not only the ABV is different, the Southern Tier is somewhere around 10%, maybe 11.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So the ethanol heat is not quite as much. I think they both derive flavors from the same thing, as far as caramelizing the malts and then adding some vanilla to it. Ethan, do you add any lactose to this or not?
I don't believe there's any lactose in this one.
And there's no wheat?
And there's no what?
Wheat or oats? It's only barley?
They don't give me the recipes anymore. They don't give me that anymore. Because there's
we were trying to figure that out earlier, what the differences were. And with the Southern Tier is creme brulee is probably as hard or as harder to get than the Bruery creme brulee. And but it's the taste is they're both equally satisfying, and you want some more, and you will want more, and you will die if you drink too much of it. which seems quite possible. But I have a tendency to like the.
I always found myself wanting to drink one and then have a float with the other one.
Oh man, I would love to do an ice cream float with either one, but I like the ethanol heat of the brewery without doubt. It's got the brewery has a little bit more ethanol heat at close to 16%.
Now is that creme brulee? Is that part of like a series that you guys are doing? Because, like I said, I'm in St. Louis. I live in Texas. I could get you guys beer a hell of a lot easier in Texas. I was just curious because usually when you see these specialty beers are in a series. I was wondering if this was part of a series.
So this particular one is not in the series. It's the one-off we did with Three Sons down in Florida. The statement of composition, or essentially like what you read on the label, is a barley wine. But like as Darren mentioned earlier, it's not truly a barley wine. It's a blended beer. But I think that that the salt, I think there's a very strong salt component of this beer. And I think that offsets not just a little bit of the sweetness in the beer, but somehow hides some of that that alcohol. For a 15-16% beer, I mean, I don't get a lot of alcohol off of it, I don't get, I'm not gonna say alcohol, I don't get a lot of heat off of it.
Yeah.
It's mostly ethanol. It's very clean as far as the ferment is concerned.
For a nearly 16% beer, this is danger zone.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
And I think I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but that salt component is part of what keeps drawing me back to the glass.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of savory note to it, and I want more of that.
Yeah.
That's sort of like beer nuts. You want to drink more beer.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So there was a salt addition. So I'm sorry, I was working on some recipes and working on some other stuff while listening in. There was a salt addition into the creme brulee?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, very nice.
That's a curious point there. Where and how is the salt added?
Was that in the mash or was that in the boil?
Who decided that was a good idea? Because it was a great idea.
Salt accentuates certain flavors.
I might have missed that. I was out of the room earlier.
Great question. I don't have the definitive answer for you, but based on my experience, I think the salt addition could just as easily be added in the kettle as it could be cold side when you're adding all these other ingredients. The danger of adding it cold side is it just means that
it's just not going to break down.
Good point. I actually didn't consider that point. I'm thinking that it's just prolonged exposure to oxygen. When you're physically adding ingredients to a beer, there's an open tank. Unless you have a closed vessel that you purge with CO2 and then you pump into your bright tank, which we do on occasion. But adding salt, that's just one more thing. But I mean, now that you mention it, it just seems like salt is going to dissolve in a hotter liquid.
That's kind of what I'm curious about.
That's probably the no-brainer. I'll ask Darren. We'll find out.
Sodium, salt, NaCl, sodium chloride. I mean, it's going to dissolve just as easily in the mash as it will in the boil. So, and this is just me demonstrating my ignorance of the chemical process. Do you have any?
But what he brought up was if it was a cold or a hot addition, and if it's a cold addition, the salt it doesn't, with salt and cold water, it takes a very long time for it to become soluble. Whereas
It'll still dissolve.
it just takes a hell of a lot longer.
Yes, so sodium chloride does not affect the mash pH much, unlike phosphates and sulfates and things like that. And whether you add it in the mash or add it in the boil, it's added purely for taste purposes. So I don't think it matters.
Right. But what my point is I love hearing that you put a salt addition in there, because savory, salt can lift up certain flavors, and till you get to that point of adding more water to break down and not be so salty.
Right. Saturation, sure.
Oh, was it? What was it actually salt? Was it sodium chloride and not potassium chloride?
I don't have the answer for you there. My assumption would be that it's like a true salt, like as if we were gonna like add salt to like a goza, yeah.
But still fair questions. I'm just curious, like, where do you guys choose to add it? And I mean, maybe you're not privy to that. I don't know, but that's just why I'm just curious. Questions.
No, I'm with you. I'm kind of curious too if it was more of a saltwater solution for the mash, or if it was addition into the boil. But if it was done as an addition at the cold side, it just takes longer for it to break down and become part of the solution. Very interesting questions. And sorry to beat you up on this, Ethan. Sorry.
No worries. I don't know if we'll be on long enough to get an answer, but I'm gonna.
Oh, it's interesting because I only typically hear some salt additions for water adjustments or for gose. So to hear it in a creme brulee is fantastic because salt, and when you put those flavor combinations together, you need some salt to accentuate some of those flavors. So it's freaking really cool.
So accentuates the caramelization of the creme brulee.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. It's
that whole the flamed sugar type of deal, without a doubt.
It's well known and understood.
It makes you wonder whether it actually is, but whether it's sodium chloride or potassium chloride, because I would think that potassium chloride would have more of a burnt sugar taste than the sodium chloride.
Yeah, it's it's just very interesting to me and I didn't mean to beat you up over it. So okay, whatever. You're talking about hazies? Let's talk about hazies. I hate them.
I wanted to add something about the salt character. A lot of people, you add salt to a steak or you add salt to just a savory meal because it definitely brings out the flavors. It's underappreciated, I think, the salt addition to sweet flavors. So like a caramel, a salted caramel is fundamentally different, and it definitely still accentuates the flavor. So you're going to have a pastry stout or something like this creme brulee here. A salt addition is a fantastic idea to be able to accentuate the flavors you're already trying to bring out with everything else in the recipe.
Yeah, all of a sudden you've gone from like a generic sweet to something that's sharp and defined, without doubt. Yeah.
And Ethan, just to explain, I hate hazies. I haven't had your hazy. I didn't get your beers tonight, but the hazies that I have that epitome hop berm that I just don't like.
Yeah, fair.
It's not flavor, it's not aroma. It's like, okay, where's my Pepto?
Yeah.
Well, I must say the horse was kind of.
So which came first, the horse or the cart?
We did the cart.
The horse.
I was kind of wondering whether we would wind up doing it. I honestly think we should have done the horse before the cart because the horse honestly was bland, and everybody here was bland. But the cart was actually it had some really nice hop notes. I liked it without doubt, and it was closer to an East Coast hazy than a West Coast hazy. for
So I'm
whatever
gonna.
reason,
I want to
and I'm
put Ethan on the spot here.
I don't know if Ethan, if you before you moved out there, whether you tried some of the West Coast interpretations of the hazies, but the West Coast hazies for a long time were not really very interesting. And then you had, like some people out here that started doing some really nice.
You're already struggling, Bruce. The hazies out here still aren't interesting.
For the most part, yeah. Well, but there's still some that know how to do it. Goddamn, what's Mr. Wynn's brewery there? The one within stumbling distance of Smog City.
Monkish.
Oh, Monkish?
Yeah, Monkish. God, I know the guy's name. I know, yeah, he is. It's like I can never remember Monkish, but he does a really good interpretation of what a hazy should be.
It's because
And
he's like really good
Coast-
friends with a lot of the brewers out here on the East
Yeah.
Coast. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
So,
I'm gonna-
yeah, an East Coast hazy is without doubt different than the West Coast interpretation for the most part. But out here they still try to. They still think that they're supposed to be sweet and juicy, like an orange Julius. And
I mean, but by and large, like they are. Like I would recommend Alvarado Street. If you guys have ever had them, I would recommend. So Alvarado Street is a California brewery. Revision. I don't remember where they are, but they can't remember if they're California or not. But they're a strong like West Coast like brewery. In terms of like hazies.
What do you think of Mumford?
I haven't had any of their beer.
Mumford, as far as their beer overall, or as far as their hazies?
The hazies, they specialize in hazies. Like 80% of what they do is hazy.
Oh, really? I thought no. I've never really noticed that. They've had a lot of other stuff, but yeah, they're like a little bit better, but they're still a little bit more sweet than I like. I like a drier where the juiciness or the perceived sweetness comes from the hops.
I have to.
Like everybody says the heady topper is the shit, but it's like okay, it's a good hazy, but it's not really it's not a West Coast IPA. It's an East Coast hazy.
Yeah, and even then, I think like Heady Topper is like, I mean, it set its own benchmark, but like in terms of like modern day like hazies, it's starting to take a little bit of a back seat. I think when you're by and large when you're talking with folks who want a good solid hazy IPA, there's going to be that like residual sweetness. So if you're looking for something dry, you might not always be satisfied with the mainstream hazy IPAs.
So I have a serious question, Ethan, and this question comes because so we do a happy hour here in St. Louis as well. We just started it in January. It damn near doubled in 2 months, which was fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, we went from 39 packs last month to 57 this month, and I'm kind of worried about what next month is going to be.
Awesome, Ryan. Keep it up.
That's a good thing.
But I asked this question.
Area?
What's that?
They're all right from your local breweries. You got like
Yeah, they're right here in St. Louis. Yeah, they're right here in St. Louis. So this month was 1140, and I was like, yes, we're gonna like meet and match the Falcons. And then Elon told me, and I was like, shit.
That's crazy because I didn't know St. Louis had any breweries in it.
Oh, they got a shit. It's amazing. It's exploded.
Yeah, so we did 1140 this month. But anyways, I asked the question on a pint with, which is another cast I do, and then the happy hour. And I want to ask you the same thing because I have to put my interviewer hat on. I got to take Drew's spot here for a minute. What is your go-to beer that you go to when you just want to sit down and have a damn good beer? And remember, you're still on recording because nobody turned it off.
Why would I turn it off?
Also, I don't think there's a single memory here that is going to linger past tonight.
This is a hard topic. This is a very hard question for people that brew beer because like I brew, we're all homebrewers, but we have that one beer that when we see it on the shelf, we're like, oh.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So it is a very
it's a tough
question.
one
Because so the beer perk, when you work at a brewery, the beer perks are so good.
Yeah, you never get free beer.
But like, right, exactly. You never get free beer, right? Like, so like all I'm surrounded with is like brewery and offshoot beer all day long. And so like why would I go spend money on like other beer, But I do.
But what is that one beer that if you see it on the shelf, you go, you're coming home with me tonight?
Did you manage to get any Pliny the Younger?
It's not Pliny the Younger. So it's probably like Velvet Merlin.
Nice.
Or because that's not readily accessible
on the East Coast,
I'll buy that anytime I see it. Or any of those versions.
Well, I think that answers Ryan's question. You'll buy that anytime you see it.
Yeah,
I will.
If it's like right there and you see it, you're like, that's mine.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's the Castel Rouge. Partly because one, it's a fantastic beer, and two, it has a sentimental value to it as well.
Well, you're up there on the Upper East Coast, and I know that Southern Tier distributes up there quite readily. So you should be able to get their version of the creme brulee if you have not had it.
So you're in DC, right?
But he also,
I am.
I think
Okay, you can't. You still, but Shipyard doesn't come down to you, does it?
You see it around Shipyard. You said.
Okay. We need to talk.
Yeah.
But I think Ethan had another answer that he was queuing up before we all interrupted him simultaneously.
I know. You still want to know what the other beer is that he still
know.
So a little bit more accessible is the Cigar City. The Cigar City, the brown ale. Maduro brown ale. Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was the Castel Rouge because that's what we had on our honeymoon. Castel Rouge, me and my wife had on our honeymoon, and my other one is the Mephistopheles, but they don't make it anymore, so I'll never see that again.
Ethan,
Now,
tell me
what
reaction to the brown ale.
Avery doesn't do the Mephistopheles anymore?
No, they ended the Demon series a couple of years ago, like 3-4 years ago. They stopped it.
Oh my God, I don't think I even have any left.
Yep.
I was keeping the vertical of that. Oh shit.
Nope, it's over.
If I'd known that, I would have kept a hold of it for a while.
But Ethan, we need to talk offline because Shipyard is one of my wife's favorite beers, and we can't get it here, so we might have to figure out a little.
We can do that.
Trade here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because she hasn't had it since she was in Maine about 5 years ago. Because it doesn't leave the East Coast.
Right.
Ryan, I got to tell you, man, the brewery has these membership series. The Preservation Society and the Hoarders Society and shit like that. I shared what was the other one? The middle one, the $300 a year one.
That's the Reserve Society.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I had the brewery for the first time in Fort Worth, Texas, at the Flying Saucer, and I was blown away. I was like, "What the hell is this?" I'm like, I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said, "What the hell is this? This is completely different."
Stuff. Period.
And it was fantastic, and way more accessible there. than it is here. But very, very good beers. I really enjoy you guys' beers.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
So
lots of creative
the membership for the Reserve Society is like $300 or was, and and they gave you more than $300 worth of beer, but over that period of time, they came out with they would offer you things that were not available to everybody else. And I swear to God, over that period of time, I spent like $3,000. And another friend of mine that I knew had actually become a hoarder, a member of the Hoarders, which is $800 a year. And that year that he was a member of, or I should say, the one year that he was, the first year he was a member of, because he did multiple years, he spent $8,000 on beer.
Ooh.
And some mighty fine beers, I must say.
Yeah, we see that. We see that. That's for sure.
So Ethan, what are some beers coming out that you're really excited about? Like you're just like, I cannot wait for this thing to come out and hit the market. What are some of the beers coming out of the tank that you're just like, this is gonna be so good?
Yeah, I must say, have you got anything that's coming close to like the Utopias?
Nothing quite that fortified. Nothing quite that strong. I think I'm like a big fan of, we mentioned her earlier in the call, was horchata, which for a little while was like a year-round beer for us, and then we dialed it back, and it's just like a seasonal at the moment. That's coming out. I always love sharing that with people, especially if those people are kind of like new to craft beer. A lot of the beers and like these like up and coming breweries, I talked about those 3 buckets. They'll add lactose and there'll be a bunch of vanilla. Well, we've been making horchata, like not the actual drink, obviously. We've been making that for a long time. And I just love seeing like people's like reactions to that, so that's obviously inspired by like the Mexican drink horchata. And it's a blonde ale with lactose, vanilla,
rice.
What's that?
Yeah, how do you make that? You use a lot of rice syrup?
We don't use any syrup, but we do use we do use a little bit of rice in it, but it's not a syrup.